I know my focus is mostly on motherhood, so this message may sound a little counterintuitive, but in order of priority, our marriage comes first. And I believe that our children are served best by having both a mother and a father in their home. Therefore, it is in the best interest of our children that our marriage not only survive, but thrive. So for me, protecting and prioritizing our marriage is actually protecting and prioritizing my children. It's the soil that my children's roots are planted in. So I'll be honest, I have not lived this perfectly. My husband and I have been married for 24 years, and we have certainly had our ups and downs. We have survived some excruciatingly difficult years that nearly broke us, and seasons when the work of repair felt heavier than we could even carry. But we kept choosing each other, choosing to fight for something bigger than ourselves, choosing to keep the covenants that we made before God. One of the ways that we have fought for our marriage is with a simple set of rituals that hold us up. A date night every week, an overnighter every quarter, and even an anniversary trip together every year. And we just started that over the last decade. But it's these little investments that are deposits into the savings account of our marriage. They're maybe small, but they are part of the scaffolding that holds our family together. So that brings me to a story that has never left me. So about 9 years ago, my husband and I were boarding a plane for our yearly anniversary trip. I was hugely pregnant with our 8th baby. The kind of pregnant that fellow passengers are kind of giving you the side eye, like, you better not have this baby on this airplane. My ankles were swollen, my back was sore, and all I wanted to do was just make it through that 12-hour flight ahead of us. So I shuffled onto the plane and found our row, and it had 3 seats across. So I squeezed into my seat next to this woman who was probably in her mid to late 40s. She was beautiful, super well put together, and she just had this quiet air of confidence about her, of somebody that's obviously used to traveling alone. We did the usual airplane pleasantries. Where are you headed? Business or pleasure? That kind of thing. And she told us that she was a neurologist, and I immediately just perked up because I am a geek and I love the brain, and I'm fascinated by that kind of stuff. So just hearing that word neurologist just filled me with respect for her education and all those things. So when we learned she was on her way to some worldwide conference for neurosurgeons where she would be the keynote speaker and that she would be training and teaching there for a week, and I was like, but this was just a regular occurrence for her. She traveled the world as guest speakers at these kinds of conferences all the time. Nothing special, nothing new. I was enamored and just captivated by her. And I kept asking her question after question. She was living this life that I could only dream of. She was educated, important, well-known, respected. And there was just this element of glitz and glamour to her renownedness. That's not a word probably, but it is now. She traded just little scraps of her time for this huge crap ton of money. And it offered her freedom and time and the money to just truly experience the world at levels I could only dream about. And she just shrugged it off. That's what I do. I travel the world speaking at conferences like this. But then the stories began to flow. She told us about how she stayed in Costa Rica after a conference for 6 months because she just wanted to learn Spanish and explore the country because she could. And how she backpacked through Europe after one of her conferences for the whole summer. And how she kayaked down some river in China for 5 weeks with nothing but a tent and a backpack and a kayak, and she told us about all the countries she'd visited and the people who flew her across the world to hear her speak. And I was just captivated. Every word felt like a postcard from a life that I could hardly even imagine. The prestige, the recognition, the freedom, the money, experiences that she was having. She had it all. And I'll admit, I was sitting there with my swollen ankles and the baby kicking the crap out of my ribs and a whole lot of pressure just sitting on my bladder. And I was adjusting in my seat, just secretly coveting her glamorous life. She only had work a couple weeks a year and just more money than she knew what to do with. So hours passed like that, and she just had me salivating like a hungry dog over her stories. And then at some point, somewhere over the Pacific, she stopped and turned to me and she's like, "So what about you? What do you do?" And I just froze and looked down at my lap like, oh, nothing. I'm just a stay-at-home mom. And as soon as those words left my lips, I just felt this wave of shame, smallness, like I had just confirmed every stereotype of unimportant, unimpressive, unremarkable, barefoot and pregnant again. She tilted her head. She's like, oh, this isn't your first baby? And my husband and I looked at each other and we just laughed. And we're like, no, this is actually number 8. And her jaw just, she almost fell out of her seat. And she like, 8! She said it like 29 decibels too loud. And she like turned and apologized to everybody around us for her outburst. But then she leaned forward like she had discovered some national treasure. And suddenly she was just fixated on me. And the questions started pouring in. Can I see a family picture? Oh my gosh, what's it like? Who's the oldest? What is she like? How old is the youngest? Do they get along? What's it like having a daughter? What's it like having a son? What do you love the most about being a mom? What's the hardest part? How do you do it all? And she just asked me question after question with that same amount of captivation that I had felt when I was listening to her glamorous life. And then after a while, her voice softened and she said, can I be vulnerable? And I was like, of course. She's like, you're living my dream. I was like, huh? She took a breath and she's like, you're living the life that I wish I had chosen. When I was young, I was sold a bunch of lies that a relationship would just get in the way of my education, that I didn't want or need a man, that I could make my own money, that having a family would impede my greater purpose, that children were a burden, and that they would destroy my body and tie me down, and that they would cost me my education, my career, my goals, and ultimately it would affect my happiness. And she's like, can I tell you something? I believed all of it. And I went on to chase and achieve every single one of my dreams. I hit every benchmark and every goal. And now I have all the time and the money in the world, but I have no one to share it with. She's like, do you even know how lucky you are? You have this loving marriage. You're traveling the world with someone else. You have this legacy through your children that will outlast you both. You have so many deep relationships to share your life with, so many people who love you and care about you. And the world is still at your fingertips. You had all those babies. You created this beautiful family with relationships to share your life with. And whenever you're ready, you can still choose to further your education, to chase your dreams, to have a lucrative career. But I lived my life backwards, and now my biological window is shut. I have all the time and the money in the world and no one to love and no one to love me, no one to share my life story with, nothing to outlive me. I travel the world, but I have no one to come with me, to experience it all with, to talk about it with. I don't even have someone to call when I land. She said, I would trade places with you in a heartbeat if I could. I never in a million years could have possibly looked at it that way before she had placed it out there on my lap before me. So she said, our culture sells women a lie. It tells us, don't get married too soon, don't have kids or don't have too many kids, focus on yourself, build your career, a family can wait. And she's like, but when that happens, one day you wake up at 45 with all the accolades, the paychecks, the stamps in your passport, but no one to pass your legacy on to. You have everything that the world would call a success, but all you feel is the deep ache of loneliness and regret. That's crazy. So look, I don't speak as someone who has it all figured out. I speak as a mother of 9 who's still stumbling forward, still making mistakes, still needing God's grace every single day. But I also speak as someone who has seen the fruits of having a family and the joy of having a family. I've watched my older children grow and turn into leaders, into men and women who love God and work hard and care deeply. And that didn't come from perfect parenting. It came from imperfect but faithful parents choosing marriage and family and God over and over and over again. Children are not a burden. They're a blessing, a heritage, our legacy. They're the way that we reach into the future long after we're gone. So motherhood, it's not glamorous. It's messy and it's loud and it's things like swollen ankles on airplanes and sleepless nights and sick toddlers and unseen sacrifices, but it's also world shaping. I love that quote that says the hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world, because children are tomorrow's leaders, teachers, builders, and disciples. So think about what it means to have children. It's somebody to hold your hand in your old age, someone to call you mom or dad, someone who carries your story into the future, someone who will still care about you when the world moves on. So what career can replace that? What paycheck could possibly compare to that? At some point, tears welled up in my seatmate's eyes, and she told me that she didn't even have someone to put on her in case of emergency card. And can you even feel the weight of that? All that brilliance in the world, but no family to call when life falls apart. Marriage and family are not just personal choices. They're the foundation of society and civilization. So strong families create strong communities and strong nations. Children raised in stable homes with loving mothers and fathers are more likely to thrive emotionally, academically, spiritually. They're less likely to fall into addiction, crime, despair. And that's not just someone's opinion, it's research and it's history. So if we want to preserve what is good and true in the world, it begins in the home. It begins with family. It begins with mothers and fathers who are willing to sacrifice for each other and for their children. So if you are young and you're hearing this cultural message of don't marry, don't have kids, live for yourself, don't believe that lie. Marriage and children will not ruin your life. They will make your life worth living. Careers, they can be built later. Money can be made later. We have traveled the world both on our yearly anniversary trips and with kids in tow. And it's both beautiful. But that biological window for having a family, it's so short and it doesn't reopen once it closes. So be courageous. Say yes to marriage. Say yes to children. Say yes to the sacred, ordinary work of motherhood and family, because one day you'll look back and it won't be the titles or the passport stamps or the money that matters in the end. It will be the people who call you theirs. The cool thing is that I can now attest to the fact that she was right. 5 years after having my 9th baby and losing 6 babies in a row, trying for number 10 and realizing that another baby was not in the cards for me, I did return to school and I got my master's degree. And now I have the opportunity of traveling the world, teaching something that I am super passionate about that uses my unique education to go out and make a difference in the world. And it brings me so much purpose along with raising my family. You can have it all, just not all at once, and only if you do it in the right order. Get married, have babies, give 100% of yourself to your family, and then one day you'll find yourself more seasoned with a lot more time and a little more money, and you can go out and get your dreams. They're all still there waiting for you, and you'll find that you have the best of both worlds. The hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world, and don't trade that for anything. Okay, bye.